Well, let's speak further then about Bheki Cele's appearance before the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee that's looking into those allegations of corruption and interference in the country's police service. Bring in Professor Kholofelo Rakubu, security expert and head of the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. Prof, welcome back to SABC News. So, Bheki Cele clearly came ready to talk when he landed in Cape Town today, and sing like a canary he did.
Good evening. What an interesting day. He came ready to talk, but what do we understand from his testimony? He came with mix of contradiction, mix of clarification, a subtle deflection. And in most cases, he tried to challenge some of Mkhwanazi's allegations or testimonies or claims, particularly when it comes to the debate around the constitutional powers. He tried to provide clarity on the ministerial positions when it comes to establishing and disbandment of PKTT, for example, and again distance himself from your controversial actions. So to sum up his testimony, it was clarificatory and defensive a bit. It was also he came to correct misstatements, right? And to defend his legacy mostly, because he was also taken aback around some of the decisions that started during his tenure, and he shifted some of responsibility for controversial decisions. But what South Africans are mostly interested on is whether he threw the minister under the bus. I will say subtly yes, because he didn't directly accuse Minister Mkhwanazi of wrongdoing, but he highlighted extensive contradiction in Mkhwanazi's testimony, right? And also expressed surprises around the decision to disband and reiterated that such decisions to expand were beyond ministerial legal authority.
Right.
But then interestingly, he talks about lack of handover, which is a very critical step in the policing leadership. When a new minister comes in, there must be a handover to assist with continuity, for institutional memory, right? To respect for expertise. Maybe we could not have arrived at this decision today because obviously, Cele comes in with what? Institutional memory. And to ensure continuity, you need this expertise and understanding from the horse's mouth, the one who led or drove this ship, right? To give you an understanding of how do we arrive at this decision and the reports at hand, so that you are assisted to take further decisions or in well-informed decisions. So it looks like there has been rivalry that we might not have known, or mistrust between the two, or political disalignment, and so forth. So that is what I picked up from today's testimony.
To what extent did the former minister, Cele, incriminate himself today, if that is the correct wording when you consider that he's not appearing before a court or a judge in this instance? And how much do you think of his liberal speech and just how free he was in going into detail has to do with the fact that ultimately, when you look at the main issues that are scandalous here, they came after his incumbency. So he was not the minister.
He was not the minister. His character today, that's Cele for you. You might even miss the critical points because of his character. A bit of defensiveness there, self-implicating here and there. When did you first know Nhlanhla? Can Nhlanhla then approach you prior to your exit? What information? Obviously, Nhlanhla cannot just go to an ordinary person to come to for assistance. What is it, or what kind of relations did you still have in the SAPS that led to you being identified by Nhlanhla as a critical figure to be met to assist with certain issues in there? Although you said you did not want to rule from the grave, but you were identified as a critical figure, and then to come and openly kindly indicate that you took you were provided accommodation for free. Obviously, as a minister, you had some intelligence around key figures because this man has been implicated in most cases. This is the question that Sibia was asked about vetting. Does that mean the minister even left the organization without knowing critical figures that infiltrated the organization to meet freely and to even talk about police-related issues? And again, we understand the retraction from Mkhwanazi, but the retractions are about payments, right? Retractions, I don't think are about communication. What kind or what was the nature of communication? There's a retraction and also error by analytical team, which we understand, and I'm sure clarification will be provided on that. But there's no retraction on extensive communication. Intel report, I'm sure, might even lead us to further to explain in-depth relationship or the nature of relationship between the two. So we're still interested in that regard. But for now, retraction is on one aspect. Meeting after, it might be that you met before, but this is also something that the committee should maybe tap deeper into for verification. I don't take it that you met, it was for the first time meeting. You've been in the service for quite some time. You've led in this spectrum for quite some time. You understood very well who you were dealing with. But again, let's give the committee an opportunity to verify, because today they were big probing as always. And also what was interesting for me, they were occasionally confrontational. And I'm talking of the MPs, maybe due to Cele's nature, Cele's character, right? They were direct and occasionally confrontational.
Well, you could even say that perhaps it was as combative in parts, because ultimately, in all that he had to say, there were very few parties that were left unscathed in terms of names that he was dropping, linking the MKP to Louis Liebenberg, the diamond smuggler. He also had linked Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, to one of the people who came up in his evidence. I'll ask you about Mkhwanazi in a moment, but I want to talk about Cele and these meetings and the conversations with Vusumuzi Nhlanhla, who we know now is in police custody, a suspected criminal. What business would a former minister have having all of these conversations with a man who, for the last year or so, there had been published reports about his alleged criminal dealings, and Cele says he was getting information from him? Does that explanation does it hold water? Are you convinced?
It doesn't. It's not convincing enough. Maybe other MPs will probe on that to expose inconsistencies in his narrative. It does not hold water. He's been, like I said, he's been in the system for quite some time. And remember, he was very worried that the new minister did not even bring him on board or consult, right? You consult because you understand that this person has extensive information or knowledge of the ground. So you need that person. Definitely this person also has information on the characters like your Cat Matala. There's no way. So that is why we deemed it fit that the two should have met for continuity and for information sharing, right? And also for institutional memory. Does that mean his memory led this critical part that infiltrated the SAPS with such a huge tender? So the minister is saying he got to know of the tender after during the first meeting. I do not think so, because this tender was highly debated. It was controversial, and he was still in office at some time when Ket Matala was crisscrossing the offices. And with his institutional memory, obviously during discussions about the Sibia character, Ket Matala would have featured here and there. And there are allegations as well that he mentions where a Rolex watch of somebody's wife was stolen. That name is thrown in the picture. And I'm sure he had that information when he was still in the system, because Khumalo, like he's saying, he was targeted during his tenure. It's not a new thing that Khumalo is being targeted. Who targeted Khumalo? For you not to even understand this controversial character, for you to even go and meet this controversial character who has infiltrated this during your tenure. To what extent were you working with him? So those are the questions I was left with. But I'm hoping that the MPs will probe on that for inconsistencies and contradiction, because now we're left with this questionable relationship and questionable meeting, and also questionable answers around accepting an offer from such a person, a gift from such a person.
And Professor, you and I have about 4 minutes left, so I'd like us to press on with one or two other things. The first being, much of the evidence that you've just alluded to regarding what Cele says Nhlanhla told him was basically a scheme to get rid of Dumisani Khumalo, who we know was ultimately charged with corruption in winter of this year. He then alleges that even the affidavit used in the matter was crafted by the Deputy National Commissioner of Police, Shadrack Sibiya. So he places at the scene in that conspiracy against Khumalo Sibiya. He places Mkhunu. He also places, I think it was Brown Mkhwanazi, and then ultimately Kat Nhlanhla. How reliable is information from a suspected criminal in this matter, that being Kat Nhlanhla, who told Cele all of this?
Now, if Cele doesn't have a supporting document or substantive document or evidence to support what he was told, it's going to be difficult to verify. Where were you? Yes, we know where you were told, but was it the nature of the communication? Remember, here we deal with evidence. What is it that Cele is bringing on the table that I was told, and here's an evidence? Because we cannot at some point be entertaining hearsays to safeguard our own remember, he played a part, right? He met with this person. You went there to provide what? For you to receive such kind of information. So where is the evidence that such information was shared for us to even try to tap into it? Are you removing yourself? Because remember, he's shifting responsibility of controversial decisions and controversial association. So when you want to remove responsibility or shift responsibility from controversial association or political association, you bring whatever conspiracy on board, and it's difficult to bring to even prove controversies, but it will make sense due to the character of the controversial person in question. But where is the evidence that you met, and what was the nature of the discussion? What did you bring on board for him to freely give you such information, to even self-implicate? Did you prove to be an alibi or an ally or a friend to him, to trust you to an extent that he can now bring Sibiya on board or throw Sibiya under the bus? Because to say this was written by so and so, what did you bring on board as a source of support and a confidante in that regard? Because you did not go there as an investigator. So what did you bring on the table for you to be trusted to such an extent?
I think what you're saying ties in with the question that the evidence leader, Advocate Norman Arendse, asked Cele around 3 p.m. this afternoon, when he asked him if he was unwittingly led into a web of criminality, or if he walked into it, if you will, with his eyes wide open. But as we end then, one of the breaking lines from today's proceedings has been a message received from the KZN Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, saying, oops, I got it wrong regarding alleged financial links between Cele and Kat Nhlanhla, right? He said there was an account, a bank account into which money was sent, and ultimately there was, I think, proof of a deposit that Cele would have received, something to that effect. Does that mean that A, Mkhwanazi lied under oath, and B, is it reasonable grounds then to cast a shadow over the credibility of his evidence?
I wouldn't say it's questionable or we can cast a shadow on the credibility of his evidence. In the analysis of evidence, there are errors here and there that I will say. And we're now interested in the source of mistake. And that source of mistake must make sense. What led to that? Which numbers were compared and how? And remember, Mkhwanazi does not conduct analysis himself. So there's a team that looks into information calls and this and that to come and advise Mkhwanazi to say, here is what we have found. So now it looks like the error by analytical team, it's so huge that indeed it has aspects of now shadowing his allegations. But then with all the testimonies provided, this is the first time wherein, although it was not anticipated. Remember, South Africans have so much faith in this in his allegations or in his testimony. This was not anticipated. But what is teaching us is we work as a team, then the analytical team's report is critical to an extent that thorough verification must be done before speaking to certain aspect. But in this case, we look into the source of this error. Does it make sense? Is it justifiable?
Right.
So that we can proceed you in that analogy. So I think for South Africans to understand this source of error and how it occurred, because now interestingly, source of error is only on the deposit. Is there error in the communication, extensive linkages, telecommunication evidence, and so forth? That is not questioned at the moment. Error is in here, but it's justifiable to ask, to even further ask, are there other errors anticipated? So thorough work should be done, thorough analysis should have been done to avoid this. It's a bit embarrassing, but it takes a strong man, if I were to say so, to come boldly to say, I made a mistake. Not the analytical team. We got to understand of the analytical team immediately after, when justification was required as to how did we arrive at this.
Professor Kholofelo Rakubu, good to talk to you as always, security expert and the head of the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management with the Tshwane University of Technology.